Hey everyone, and welcome back to ABA Chapter Chat. Today we are taking a deep dive into something I think we all struggle with, both professionally and personally.
Oh, yeah,
Self-management.
for sure.
You know that feeling when you want to change a behavior,
Yeah,
but those instant rewards for not changing are just too tempting?
absolutely.
Like choosing to watch Netflix over hitting the gym.
Yep.
Or having just one more cookie when you're trying to be healthy.
Oh, yeah. That's so relatable.
That's where ABA can really help us.
Exactly. It can help bridge that gap between our goals and our actual behaviors.
So let's break this down a bit.
Okay.
What exactly are we talking about when we say self-management problems?
In ABA terms, it really comes down to this mismatch between our long-term goals and our current behaviors.
Okay.
And it often shows up as either behavioral deficits or behavioral excesses.
Okay, so could you give us some real-world examples?
Definitely. So a behavioral deficit might be someone who wants to exercise regularly,
Okay.
but just can't seem to get started. The source material actually had a great example of this with a guy named Murray.
Oh, tell me about Murray.
He loved to run, but after college, when he got a full-time job, he just couldn't keep it up. He'd come home tired and hungry, and things like snacking and watching TV just took over.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of our listeners can relate to Murray.
Definitely.
Life just gets in the way.
It does.
And those immediate rewards are just so much easier.
Right. You get pulled in, and those good intentions just kind of fade away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a classic self-management problem. Those quick rewards.
Like relaxing on the couch.
Yeah, they win out over the long-term benefits.
Took exercise.
Exactly. So how do we tackle this?
Right.
What tools from ABA can we use to actually overcome these self-management struggles?
Well, there are actually a wide range of techniques and strategies.
Okay.
And they all have their own strengths. Some of the most common ones, though, are setting specific and achievable goals,
Okay.
monitoring our behaviors really carefully, making changes to our environment before the behavior even happens, which we call antecedent interventions.
Okay.
And we can also use things like behavioral contracts, arranging reinforcers and punishers,
Wow.
getting social support,
Okay.
and even using self-instructions and praise.
It sounds like a very comprehensive approach.
It is. It's about finding what works for the individual.
You mentioned antecedent interventions.
Yes.
Could you give us an example of how those might actually work?
Sure. The source material actually highlighted a woman named Annette who was struggling with keeping her apartment clean.
Roommate drama.
Yes. Her roommate Shannon wasn't too thrilled about the mess.
Class.
So Annette decided to use antecedent interventions to address this.
Okay.
She started with some simple things.
Like what?
Visual reminders to clean up,
Okay.
pre-portioning her food to reduce the number of dishes she was using,
Smart.
and they even made a cleanliness contract.
A contract.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was between Annette and Shannon
Okay. I like
to
that.
set clear expectations and accountability.
I love the idea of a cleanliness contract.
Yeah,
It's a great example of antecedent interventions in action.
it is.
It's not just about willpower.
Right.
It's about structuring your environment to make the desired behavior easier.
Exactly.
You also mentioned social support as a valuable tool.
Yes.
What role does that play in self-management?
Social support is incredibly powerful. Think back to Murray and his running.
Okay.
He joined a running club
Oh, good for him.
and started planning runs with other people.
Nice.
It not only gave him motivation because he knew people were expecting him to be there,
Yeah,
but it also made running more enjoyable.
that's such a great point.
Yeah.
We don't have to go it alone.
We don't.
Involving others can make the process more fun and hold us accountable.
Absolutely.
So we're less likely to give up on those good intentions.
We call that short-circuiting.
Short-circuiting.
Yeah, when we give in to temptation despite our plans.
I think we've all done that.
Oh, yeah.
Well-
Like saying we'll only watch one episode, but then binging the whole season.
Oh, for sure, I've been there. But your point about social support is spot on.
It can really make a difference.
But how do we go about actually creating a solid self-management plan?
Right.
Where do we even begin?
The source material actually outlines a very clear 9-step process.
9 steps.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's break those down so it doesn't feel overwhelming.
Sounds good.
What's the very first step we should take?
The first step is simply making the decision to change.
Well.
It might seem obvious,
Sure.
but it's about consciously acknowledging that there's something you want to work on
Right.
and making that commitment to actually put in the effort.
It all starts with that initial spark of motivation.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the spark. What's next?
Next, we need to define our target behavior very specifically. It's not enough to just say, I want to be healthier.
Right.
We need to define what healthier actually means.
I see.
Is it exercising more, Eating more fruits and vegetables, getting more sleep.
Gotcha.
It needs to be clear.
So moving from a general idea to a concrete plan.
Exactly.
What comes after we've identified that target behavior?
Then it's time to think about those competing behaviors.
The distractions.
Exactly. The things that might derail our progress.
Okay.
So if our goal is to exercise more,
Yeah.
the competing behaviors might be watching too much TV or spending hours on social media.
So it's about being aware of those potential obstacles.
Yes. Understanding them is crucial for overcoming them.
Okay, so we've named our goal and we know what might get in the way.
Right.
What's the next step?
Next, we need to set specific and measurable goals.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I want to run more, you'd say, I want to run 3 times a week for 30 minutes each time.
That's much clearer.
It is. Vague goals lead to vague results.
And it's okay to start small.
Absolutely. Small successes help keep us motivated.
It's about setting ourselves up for wins.
It is.
Okay, so we've decided to change.
Yeah.
We've defined the behavior we want to work on, and we've set clear goals.
Sure.
What comes next in our self-management plan?
Now it's time to engage in some self-monitoring.
Self-monitoring.
Yes. We need to observe our behavior carefully
Okay.
and track when it happens, what happens before and after, and if there are any patterns.
So we're like detectives of our own behavior.
Exactly. We're gathering data on ourselves.
How do we do that?
You can use a notebook, a spreadsheet, or an app.
It's amazing how powerful it can be to just become more aware of our behavior.
It really is. Sometimes that alone can start to shift things in the right direction.
But to really get to the why behind your behavior,
Right.
we need a functional assessment.
We do. That's the next step.
Can you explain how functional assessments apply to self-management?
A functional assessment is like detective work. It helps us figure out what triggers a behavior and what makes it continue.
Okay.
We look at the antecedents, which are the events that happen right before the behavior,
Okay.
and the consequences, which are what happens right after.
So it's all about understanding the context and the purpose of the behavior.
Exactly, even if that purpose isn't helpful.
It's like cracking the code of our own actions.
It is. So for example,
Yeah.
if someone is constantly checking their phone, a functional assessment might show that they're doing it to escape boredom or anxiety.
Okay.
Understanding that is key to developing effective interventions.
I see. So we've made that initial decision to change.
Yes.
We've defined the target behavior.
Sure.
We've set goals.
Yes.
We're self-monitoring.
Right.
And we've conducted a functional assessment.
Exactly.
What's next in our self-management plan?
Now we move on to selecting the best self-management strategies.
Okay.
We're going to use all that information we've gathered
Right.
to pick the tools that are right for our unique situation.
So it's a personalized approach.
Very much so. It's
Yeah.
not one size fits all.
And we might need to experiment a bit.
Self-management is a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
And that journey continues with the next step, which is evaluating if the changes we've made are actually working.
So checking in to see if our efforts are paying off.
Exactly. We need to analyze the data we've collected from self-monitoring and see if our target behavior is moving in the right direction.
It's all about accountability.
It is. Making sure we're on the right track.
What if we're not seeing the changes we want?
Right.
What if those initial efforts aren't giving us the results we'd hoped for?
That's where step 8 comes in.
Okay.
It's time to reevaluate and adjust our self-management strategies.
So you go back to the drawing board.
We do. If something's not working, we need to tweak our goals.
Okay.
Try different strategies or troubleshoot any challenges.
So flexibility is key.
It is. It's not about being rigid, but about adapting our approach as we go.
What happens when we do reach our goals?
Right.
What's the final step in the process?
The final step is all about maintenance.
Maintaining those positive changes.
Exactly. It's the ultimate victory.
So it's not just about crossing the finish line.
No.
It's about staying on track long after that initial excitement fades. Maintenance is an ongoing process.
It is. And it involves using strategies to prevent relapse and make those changes part of our everyday life.
What kind of strategies?
We might continue self-monitoring
Okay.
to catch any slips early on.
Right.
And we can gradually reduce some of the more intense interventions
Gotcha.
while still keeping the core strategies in place.
Can we break those down a little more?
Definitely. Let's start with goal setting.
Okay, we touched on that before.
We did.
Yeah.
It's about defining exactly what you want to achieve.
Right.
Instead of saying, I want to be more organized,
Yeah.
you might say, I want to create a system for managing my emails and paperwork so I can stay on top of deadlines and reduce stress.
I love that example.
Yeah.
It's about taking a vague desire and turning it into a concrete plan.
Precisely. Vague goals lead to vague results.
Right.
The more specific you are, the more likely you are to succeed.
And starting small is okay.
It is. Break those big goals down into smaller steps.
Yeah.
Those early successes will fuel your motivation.
Little wins can make a big difference.
They can. Okay, so we've set our goals.
Okay.
What's next in our toolbox?
Well, you mentioned self-monitoring before.
I did. It's a cornerstone of any self-management plan.
So we're putting on our detective hats again.
We are. We need to track when the behavior happens, what happens before and after, and look for patterns.
So gathering data on ourselves.
Yes. And there are some great apps out there designed for that.
I've seen a few of those.
Technology can be a really useful tool.
It can. And what I like about self-monitoring is that it helps you see those things you might not be aware of.
Exactly. Those triggers and patterns.
It brings them to light.
It does. And once you have that awareness, you can start to make conscious choices about how you respond.
So we move from unconscious habit to conscious awareness.
Exactly. Now let's talk about antecedent interventions.
Okay. Those are about setting ourselves up for success.
Right. By changing our environment before the behavior even happens.
It's a proactive approach.
It is.
I'm curious to hear more.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
If you're trying to eat healthier, an antecedent intervention might be getting rid of those tempting snacks in your pantry.
Okay.
And replacing them with a bowl of fruit on the counter.
So you're making healthy choices easier.
Exactly. You're changing your surroundings to support your goals.
Instead of relying on willpower.
Right. Antecedent interventions can take lots of forms.
Like what?
Visual reminders, rearranging your space, even creating a more supportive social environment.
So it's about taking control of our surroundings instead of letting them control us.
I like that. Now let's talk about behavioral contracts.
Oh yeah, behavioral contracts.
Yeah.
They remind me of my ABA classes.
I bet. Can you remind us how those work?
Sure. A behavioral contract is basically a written agreement between two or more people that outlines specific behaviors, goals, and consequences.
It's a roadmap for change.
Okay.
With clear expectations and accountability.
So it helps us stay committed to our goals.
Exactly. And the great thing about them is that they can be tailored to any situation.
Any situation.
Personal goals, academic goals, work goals, relationship goals.
Wow, can you give us an example?
Let's say someone is trying to cut back on social media.
Okay.
They could create a contract with a friend, agreeing to limit their scrolling time, and they could also outline consequences for going over that limit.
Like what?
Donating to a charity or doing an extra chore.
That's smart.
Yeah.
It adds another layer of motivation.
It does, and having someone else involved can be really helpful.
Especially if we tend to sabotage ourselves.
Exactly, short-circuiting.
Right. Giving in to that immediate reward even when we know it's not good for us in the long run.
Exactly. Having a contract partner can help you stay on track.
Okay, let's move on to social support.
Yes, we touched on this earlier.
But I'd love to hear more about how we can use it to enhance our self-management.
Social support is all about recognizing you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
It can be a workout buddy, a support group. Even just sharing your goals with a friend or family member.
But it's not just about having cheerleaders.
No, it's
also about having people who will hold us accountable.
Absolutely. You need people who will celebrate your wins, but also challenge you to stay on course.
And sometimes we just need someone to listen.
That's right. Someone who won't judge.
So the kind of support we need might change depending on the situation.
It will. The key is to be aware of your needs and seek out the type of support that will be most helpful.
Okay, so we need to be proactive and communicate what we need.
Exactly. What about when you need an extra boost of motivation?
Yeah, what then?
That's where arranging reinforcers and punishers can come in.
Okay.
This strategy uses the principles of operant conditioning.
Sounds like we're getting a little ABA lesson here.
Essentially, reinforcement is anything that makes a behavior more likely to happen again.
Okay.
And punishment is anything that makes a behavior less likely to happen again.
So if we want to do more of something good, we reward ourselves.
Exactly. So if your goal is to exercise more, you might reward yourself with a new workout outfit, a relaxing bath, or even just a sense of accomplishment.
And what about the behaviors we want to reduce?
That's where punishment comes in.
But we're not talking about anything harmful.
Absolutely not. Punishment in ABA is always ethical and carefully considered.
Okay, good to know.
It might involve losing a privilege, like watching TV.
Okay.
If you engage in the undesired behavior, or maybe doing an extra chore.
So it's a system of consequences to discourage those unwanted behaviors.
Exactly. And it's important to always pair punishment with reinforcement for good behavior.
Okay, right. So it's a balanced approach.
Yes, encouraging positive change.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to touch on self-instructions and self-praise.
Great point. Those are powerful tools for shaping our thoughts and actions.
How so?
Self-instructions are basically pep talks you give yourself
Okay.
to remind you of your goals and how to reach them.
Your own personal cheerleader.
And self-praise is about acknowledging your successes.
Yeah.
And giving yourself credit for your efforts.
So celebrating those small wins.
Exactly. It boosts your motivation and reinforces those positive changes.
This has been a really thorough overview of self-management strategies.
Good.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to use.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, self-management is a journey, not a destination.
And that journey continues in the final part of our deep dive into self-management.
It does.
But self-management isn't just a theory.
No.
It has real applications, especially in ABA.
Absolutely.
So how can we use these strategies with our clients?
Well, one of the most impactful ways is to actually teach those self-management skills to people with autism or other developmental disabilities.
I see.
Because many of our clients struggle with things like emotional regulation or impulse control, or even just starting tasks.
So we're giving them the tools to be more independent.
Exactly, and to improve their quality of life.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Imagine a child who has a hard time with tantrums.
Okay.
We can teach them how to use self-monitoring to recognize those early signs that they're about to have a meltdown.
So they can catch it before it happens.
Exactly. And then we can teach them strategies to calm down.
Like what?
Deep breathing or taking a break.
So they can regulate their own emotions and act.
Exactly. It's not just about teaching skills.
Okay.
It's about fostering that self-management mindset where they become active participants in their own growth.
I like that. But what about the challenges?
What do you mean?
What challenges do ABA professionals face when they try to put these self-management interventions into practice?
That's a great question. One common challenge is generalization.
Generalization?
Yeah. We want our clients to be able to use these skills outside of therapy.
In the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure those strategies are practical.
Right.
And relevant to their everyday lives.
It's about bridging that gap between therapy and real life.
It is. And motivation can also be a challenge.
Yeah, getting clients on board.
Exactly. We need to help them understand the benefits and find ways to keep them engaged.
So how do we do that?
We can incorporate their interests.
Okay.
Use fun reinforcement systems.
Yeah.
And even get their families involved.
So we're making it enjoyable and meaningful for them.
We are. And it's important to celebrate those small wins.
Those little steps forward.
Because they all add up. What advice would you give to ABA professionals who are new to using these self-management interventions? First, make sure you have a solid understanding of ABA principles.
The basics.
Exactly. Things like reinforcement punishment and extinction.
Okay.
Then really dig into the research on self-management.
Learn as much as you can.
Yes. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Try different things.
Yeah, because what works for one person might not work for another.
Everyone is different.
They are.
Yeah.
And collaboration is key.
Working together.
Yes. With your clients and their families.
I love that emphasis on teamwork.
It makes a big difference. Self-management works best when it's a team effort.
So we've talked a lot about how self-management can help our clients.
Right.
But it's also important for us as ABA professionals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't teach what we don't practice ourselves.
That's so true.
Yeah.
We need to be role models.
Yes. Showing those self-management skills in our own lives.
It's not just about being a good example, though.
Yeah.
It's about taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. This field can be tough.
It can.
It's easy to get burned out.
So self-care is essential.
It is. So for all of our listeners,
Yes.
whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out,
Uh-huh.
I encourage you to really embrace the principles of self-management.
Okay.
Not just for your clients,
Right.
but for your own personal and professional growth.
Think about something in your life you want to change.
Right.
What strategy are you going to use?
That's a great question. What small step can you take today to get started?
It all starts with that first step.
It does.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into self-management.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll be back next week with another exciting topic from the world of ABA.
See you then.
Until then, keep learning and keep growing.